Hello, this is Jimbo from the Hog House Chronicles, and this is on the YouTube channel Jimbo, South Dakota. And if you saw the last podcast, we had a man named Glenn Wakefield, and we're in Wisconsin when we filmed that, and now his son, Dennis Wakefield, has driven to South Dakota, and we are in my basement right now, actually. And he drove over here. He's got some stories to tell, as like being a dependent of a Vietnam vet, and he also served time in the Army, and he's got some stories on there, and we will go from there forward. So welcome, Dennis. Thanks a ton for driving over here.
Oh, my pleasure.
You know, I know we're both retired, but we're still pretty busy.
So, very.
So I really appreciate you taking the time
to
come over here for this. So
it'll be fun.
But yeah, so we were gonna start out as being a dependent, and if you haven't seen the Glenn Wakefield episode, feel free to go back and take a listen to that, and that'll give you a little information on what you're going to hear on this episode as well.
Right.
So
yeah, it was being a dependent of his. Well, it's a little bit of a challenge. But I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I mean, I had a lot of good experiences. I mean, I wish I could have stayed, in one place, grew up with, friends and that, but then I'd miss out on a lot of adventures, I should say. Because he moved, we were out in Washington State, out Fort Lewis, got to see Mount Rainier. I really remember it, even though I was really small. We went to Germany and spent time over there. Got into a little trouble over there, even as a little guy. Yeah, and he told that story about the mortar.
I wonder if that's what you were talking about, coming out of the woods with the mortar shell.
Yeah. Well, you got to explore when you're a kid, and they let you loose in the forest. The other kid was with us, and we found that. We thought it was cool, and hey, let's drag it back and show the adults, hey, look at what he did. We were great. And, wasn't as great.
And about as excited as your dad gets. He's like, well, where'd you find that?
Yeah. Yep. And then from there, he went to Vietnam. We lived on your corner where your parents owned that lot. So I went to school in Arkansas, and then we went down to Fort Gordon, Georgia, where he was an instructor down there. So you're constantly moving around. You don't get to stay with friends, and you're always like, well, I wonder how long I'm going to be here. And it was better when we're on a base, because all the children knew that, hey, at some time we're going to move. You have fun, you play games, you do things, but you don't get real involved in each other. And then we went up to Brainerd, where he became a recruiter. And this is where it really gets tougher, because you're going to a place where everybody has already got friends. I was in 6th grade when we got there. I think it was 6th grade. All blends together, but you try to make friends, and guess what? They got their friends, but you can hang out with a few. You get to know some of them and have some fun. And it helped that I was in sports. So then you have some common interest with somebody. So that's good. But, you don't get that sense of belonging to a community, as I'd say, like, you can relate to that, where you got to stay here with all your friends.
Yeah, because I spent, as a kid, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here I was going back to my career, but yeah, as a kid, I grew up 45 minutes south of here.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. And you got childhood friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
No doubt.
You still get to spend time. You don't really get to, you know who they are, some of the people, and you remember some of them. But yeah, it gets to be a little lonely. And that's where, I laugh even sometimes, maybe when it's not, but it's kind of like the loneliness coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the podcasts coming up that I actually filmed quite a while ago, I was one of the fighter pilots that we had, active duty one. And he talked about that as being an adult in the Air Force, moving around just not even getting close to people because you
Right.
knew, so very similar with the kids.
Yeah.
You're trying not to get too attached, but you want friends.
Right. But you get to meet a lot of different people. Like when Dad was down in Fort Gordon, there were one of the kids that we played with, his dad was in World War II and actually was parachuted in Normandy. And he was friends with, you remember that guy that hung up on the cathedral there, got his parachute caught, and, eventually the Germans shot him. He was friends with him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You get to meet from all different wars, different careers. Sometimes when you're in a base school, kids would brag, "Oh, my dad's a major," or "My dad's
Sure.
this or that," and it's like big deal.
What's that mean for you?
You're right. What's it going to get you? You're in this school with a bunch of us.
Yeah.
He's not.
Normal kid stuff, really.
Yeah. And that's what happens with in those base schools. In Germany it was really tough because I went to kindergarten. That was a tough class. I mean, we had fights in the playroom over toys. I mean, physical fights, and toys would be thrown around. I don't know where the teacher was half the time. I think Mom said she was looking for a husband. She was looking for a husband, and then, oh well.
Jeez.
But so it was pretty unruly, and that started my school career. And but going back after kindergarten, I got to go to Arkansas, so it was less competitive like that. I don't know how to say it. It wasn't violent too much. I mean, we did play King of the Hill when we won the big snowbanks.
Sure.
Teachers would have to come out, "Hey, stop it, knock it off," because there was kids getting hurt.
Right.
Get a little overzealous. And then, going down to Georgia, and, most of the kids where we went to, they were Army. And so I got into rock fights, we're throwing rocks at each other.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. It was, there was Billy. He was, he had one leg longer than the other. So he had this, the best to describe it is a Herman Munster shoe on one side.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd kind of get picked on by some of the kids. So we were out on the playground one time, and they were probably a grade or two older than us, and they started taunting them, and then started throwing rocks. So I started throwing right back, plunked one off one kid's head, and it was over.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, and you had to stick up for yourself. Dad talked about the fight that, I don't know if did he talk about the fight?
I don't remember if he said what age you were, but two guys were picking on you quite a bit, but then it came to a lunchtime deal.
Yeah.
Picked up your apple off the tray and took a bite out of it, and then you went after him like a spider monkey.
Yeah. Well, I actually stabbed him with a fork, but I don't think that ever came out. But I never had any trouble after that. You
Right.
stick, you don't like to go to violence, but you stick up for yourself. I could take some things to an extent, but after a while you have to do something.
Right.
It's like when my son had a little trouble on the playground, they would take his shoe and then play keep away. And I said, "Well, did you go to the teacher and get it resolved?" And he said they don't want to do anything. I said, "Well, if they do it again, when they come for your shoe, just kick them." I didn't know he was going to kick him in the face, but he never took his shoe again.
Right.
And then he didn't go and run to the principal or the teacher or anything. So it was all resolved.
Resolved on the playground, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were all peers and
Yeah.
figured each other out.
Right. And so then he had a better time. I always taught him, though, you never bully another child.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to answer to me. I'll punish you for it because that's not right. Never is.
Yeah, that's what I taught both my girls. And, they were 8 years apart. And I said, you see anybody getting picked on,
Mm-hmm.
even if they're bigger than you or whatever, you get in there.
Yeah.
And they did. There's a couple stories there.
That's good.
Mm.
That's good. Yep. Because sometimes teachers, I don't know, they just don't know how to handle it, or they just don't want to, or what.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's the dependent stuff. You get to move around. You get to have a lot of stories with, meeting other guys. When we were up in Brainerd, the one good thing was there was a fellow recruiter with a boy about my age. And so we got to go fishing together. His dad was from Hungary. He actually escaped Hungary in 1956 when they tried to overthrow the Russians.
Really?
Yeah, his brother turned him in. So he had to get out of Hungary before the Russians came and got him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good brother.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. But he escaped and joined the Army. And so we had a lot of good times up there. We got to go fishing together and caught a lot of fish. We'd go over to his place. He'd come over to ours. It was a fun time. And then there was another one in Georgia. His dad was actually from Philippines, and he fought in World War II on the American side, and then went into the Army, and kept in contact with them for a while, and they'd go back and forth to the Philippines and California, so that was a good time. Yep. And so then he retired, and just before I got out of high school, so he moved down to Ellsworth. So again, I had to go my junior year, go to Ellsworth, try to make friends. Yeah. But luckily I did sports. So, I went track, and that helped a little bit. And then I met a couple of guys. The next door neighbor lady, her son was a grade behind me. So I'd do things with him. He was a great help. And then graduated from there and went in the Army. And that was in 79. So at that time, the economy wasn't great. People don't realize this, that there wasn't just jobs anywhere. And I didn't know for sure what I wanted to do, if I wanted to go to college or what. And I thought, well, I'll go in the service and figure it out.
So did you and your dad talk about the service much? I mean, I'm sure he didn't press you, especially doing 2 tours in Vietnam. But did you guys have any kind of conversations about it?
There wasn't much conversation. I mean, I would come to him a few times and say, hey, maybe I could do this, and he'd say a few things, but there wasn't a lot of conversation because he was pretty silent, because he was dealing with things that happened in the war. People don't realize that he would just wanted to come home and sit in his recliner, read his paper, watch TV. And there for a while, he was smoking quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And that was a way of his dealing with it, because, we didn't have the VA dealing with that at the time.
Yeah. He talked about that too.
Yep.
Fixing it after the fact.
Yep. So the dependents, you talk to a lot of them that their dads were in a war, Vietnam, Korea, World War II. And I said, does he drink? Oh, yeah. A lot of them. And they would always always had to watch so you didn't get them angry, because they got angry. But that's the way. So you try to, do things to kind of skirt around that, so you don't get them too riled up. And you want to see them get better. But especially the World War II, there was dependents from World War II. They would really, some of them guys would really drink and get pretty angry. In fact, a place I worked with after I got out of the Army was a semiconductor company. And I worked with a guy, Brad Welsh, and his dad was in World War II. He was in Patton's Army. And being a German, his ancestry is German, he didn't like going through Germany. He was wondering if it was a relative on the other side of the line. But he was a scout in the Army. And the vehicle that he was in, he was talking about, he had a 40 millimeter that he had to shoot. He couldn't see much, and they just tell him where to shoot. He'd shoot, and he'd keep shooting until they they had a rope around his leg. So when they pulled that, then he knew to stop.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez.
Man.
Yeah. He said, Patton, oh yeah, whole blood and guts, our blood, his guts. The old saying.
Yeah, and your dad was talking about reading that book,
Mm-hmm.
or a book, at least one,
Yep.
I guess, with him, and
Yep.
learning some leadership styles, good, better, and different, you know.
Right. He was probably a good leader. He got a lot of results. So, yeah. But, yeah, he was probably a little gruff with some of the troops. You know, that's what got him pulled off the line, you know, with the one that had battle fatigue or
Right.
whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, because it happens, you get overwhelmed. Some guys can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens to some of the best ones.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So not much more on that I can think of on the dependent side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. There's and I always wondered with the kids that had to move around all the time, just had to be way rough. You know, some worse than others. Some people are more outgoing, but
Right.
if you're introvert at all, I could imagine that would. So did you, like, didn't sound like you really went out looking for friends, but since like you were in the sports, it
Right.
happened with a few just because of that, the involvement, being able to be involved with something.
Right. And you kind of learn who you can trust really quick. You can kind of be a quick judgment, which you're running into a lot of different children. Some of them are not good,
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of stay away from them, or even adults for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
You get to be a quick judge of character because you run into so many different ones. And, I never had any bad experiences, luckily, with adults. So, and some of the kids that they wanted to be friends, and it's like, and all they want to do is use you. You had that. But through sports, I got to know some. I played basketball for a while in elementary school and junior high. Wasn't very good, so I gave that up. Yeah, so that's what that helped. But I would get invited to parties, like that friend in Ellsworth, the neighbor lady's son, him and his friend one time was with me, and they invited me to a party. I said, well, I'm going to bring my couple of my friends. Oh, no, they can't go. I said, well, I'm not going. You can go have a nice party, because I think everybody should be invited.
Yep.
Yeah.
They weren't in the club.
Right. There is a cliquey club when you're in middle school. And,
all schools.
Yep. And I never really tried to be like in some of the clubs. I mean, they would invite me in that, but if they're going to be too cliquey, I didn't.
Right.
I didn't put up with much crap. We're all here. Include everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Have some fun. And, don't be rude and mean. You don't have to be. And I think that's part of our purpose on this earth, is to elevate ourselves, be a better person, try to be a better person.
Yep.
We don't have, we have a lot of faults, and we got to fight those. Some people call them demons, and you got to keep them at bay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not perfect. I don't all the time. Well, we were talking about the family and our history of anger issues.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. But, I learned to deal with that and keep that and be very more patient. The Army doesn't teach you patience.
No.
Military doesn't. Hurry up and wait. You better be patient when that happens.
Right.
But some guys you see, what are we doing here?
Yeah, you hear the same complaints.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm trying to teach it to I tried to teach it to my kids. I've got a daughter that really is impatient. I said, it's easier if you're not impatient. Just stick with it, but don't get frustrated.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not all about your time. There's other people and entities and situations involved, so you don't need to be so arrogant or egotistical about your times.
Right. Right.
As
Yep.
taught some of that to my daughters as they grew, just to instill some patience in them and understanding.
Right. You might think your time's more valuable than the other person, but it's not. It's everybody's time's valuable.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mr. Hand, if I'm here and you're here, movie reference, put it in the comments. It's the first time I've ever said anything like that.
Yeah.
So what year did you enter the military? And you said you didn't talk a lot with your dad about it, but when you entered, did you know what career field you were going into, or was it like entering it and they were putting you wherever they wanted, or entered it and you got to choose a little later?
Well, I went in, I think I was a junior. I went in the delayed entry program. Well, I was just supposed to go up and take the test, the ASVAB test. My dad gave it to me when I was in 8th grade. When he was a recruiter, he had a copy of it. So he just wanted to see how I would do. And I passed it. No problem. So I went up and took it, and I scored really high. And so the recruiter that took me up there, he says, you can pick whatever career field you want, whatever you want. I'm like, really? So I'm like, I don't know what I want. I mean, I really, because with Dad in his post-traumatic, he didn't really talk a whole heck of a lot. And see, when I went up, I wasn't supposed to enlist. I was just supposed to take the test and kind of talk to him. Well, the recruiter talked me into, hey, let's enlist. And then he showed me that it was 26 Yankee at the time. It was satellite ground station equipment repairman. And he said, you'll learn electronics. Well, I said, that sounds cool. So, yeah.
So that was very similar to what your dad did? His was more radio side?
Yeah, microwave. He was
microwave.
More of a, line of sight. But I was like, well, heck, I think I could do that. So then he talked me into enlisting. So Dad comes and picks me up, finds out that I enlisted in the delayed entry program. He wasn't too talkative. I think he knew what was coming when he got home.
Well, when you were talking to me about this earlier today, I didn't realize it was delayed entry while you were still in school.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking that question the way I was.
Yeah. So we come home, I'm kind of like, hey, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I think, because I had no idea what I was going to do. And I knew the job market was pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
So tell Mom, and I think she did not like it at all. So, he got an earful that night. Yeah. It was not good. Oh, I think they were going to, yeah. Because she didn't want me putting her through what she got put through with him,
right.
Especially going to Vietnam twice. When we were living on the corner, when he was over there the second time, she would watch Walter Cronkite every night and then see the numbers, how they put the numbers up there of dead and wounded, and that, it kind of wears on you and you wonder, right. Is it him? And, I remember, her watching it. You can tell there was angst there, so, and I mean, my childhood wasn't perfect, and nobody's really is, but, yeah, I would like to have stayed in one spot like in Arkansas or something, but it is what it is. But I got a lot of good adventures, a lot of people that I met that I wouldn't have met, and went to the places that I did.
Yeah.
I went to a lot of states in the United States. We traveled, and I got to go to overseas. We traveled when we were over there. We took a trip to Paris. Yeah, dirty city. Probably shouldn't have said that. There's trash. It wasn't the cleanest thing, and it wasn't as exciting. Well, especially for a kid,
right?
And we traveled to other places, and we got to see castles and some fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if we would have stayed in some place and settled down,
you'd have had you'd have felt a little more stable there, but you
Right.
wouldn't have gotten all the experiences either.
Right. Yeah. Probably makes you grow a little more.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I went in 78. I joined the delayed entry program. And then in September of 79 is when my schooling started. So I went in September. But before that, when I graduated from high school, I did get a job as a mason's tender for construction up until then. It was an old mason. He was pretty good, fast. So he taught me how to really be fast, and it put me in really good physical condition when I went in. I was skinny. So I was telling you earlier, so when I got to basic training down in Fort Jackson, South Carolina in October, and you don't think, when it's going to be that hot. It was hot.
Oh, yeah.
So I first get to the unit, and the Sergeant Huey grabs me when we go to the first meal, takes me in front of everybody, starts taking me through the line, and he looks at all the cooks and says, and when you serve this guy, give him whatever he wants and give him more, because he's too damn skinny. Whoops, I probably shouldn't have said that.
You're fine.
FCC is going to be on him. So, so they would load my tray up, and and I'm not a fast eater, as you saw. So I really would have to eat.
And you weighed what when they took you through the line?
139.
139.
That's just a little over 5'11". And I've got a picture of when I enlisted into the late entry program. We'll put that on.
Sure.
You'll see. And I gained a little bit in basic training, but not a whole lot, because you're constantly, doing different things. I kind of knew what was basic training was all about in that, so I didn't have any problems. Some guys were taking it a little harder.
Right.
And then when they started giving out the passes, so you didn't get a pass if you were just not good. If you weren't doing what you were supposed to do or anything, you stayed back at the barracks. So, or you got an on-base pass, or you got an off-post pass. All 3 times I got an off-post pass. So I was like, yeah. So I did pretty well. I got threatened by one of the other platoons or companies of guys, because there's 4 different units. There was 3 males and a female unit, and we had to go through this obstacle course, and I had to run the part where you go through this tunnel, and when you go through the curtain, you got to yell gas, 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 because you can smell the gas.
Right.
Well, I told these 2 guys this is exactly what they had to do. So they go down there, and they're from the other unit that's vying for honor unit. They didn't do anything. They just walked right through. They come up, they're all teary-eyed and, snot running out of their nose. And the sergeant that was on the other end that grades you said, run these 2 back again. Oh, okay. Well, and they're sitting there, why didn't you tell us it was the gas chamber? I did. I said, once you go through the curtains, you'll smell gas. Do it, because I'm not supposed to say that much, but I did.
Right.
So then at the end of the day, the drill sergeant from that unit called me over, and he says, oh, we're going to get you tonight when we see you. Oh, okay. And so then, like Sergeant Huey, what do you want? Oh, just told me that they're going to get me later tonight. Oh, really? And so I go back to formation, and they're like, what did they say? What did they say? I said, they're going to get me tonight. No, they're not. So nothing ever happened of it. And we did end up getting honor platoon, but whatever. Mm-hmm. It was good. But basic training was pretty easy. I was an E2 actually, because they gave me credit. My recruiter gave me credit for helping get a couple guys in. So you get an automatic pay increase. And then I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia for AIT training for 48 weeks.
So did you choose your career field before or after basic?
At the delayed entry.
At the delay entry, you did
Yeah,
choose.
because he said, whatever you want to choose. And he said, well, this was a good one.
Oh, so it was right then and there, not just
Right.
talking about it. You signed up
Right.
for it.
Yep. I
Okay.
signed up for that. That was in my contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had 48 weeks of school. Like, oh, wow. And it got pretty in-depth, signal tracing, all kinds of stuff. And, some of my guys that I got to know, some of them failed. And if you have a prior MOS and you went to this one, for a better job, they usually shift you back to your old MOS.
I was going to say, this one doesn't seem like a secondary to me.
No.
Not at all.
So I worked my tail off to make sure that I got through it. So, and I got through it. So I went, got my orders. I was going to go to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. I was like, yes, I'll take that. It'll be a strategic site, You got the big, parabolic dishes, and nice air-conditioned facility to work in. And all you have to do is just keep the thing running. And that ain't very hard.
Right.
I shouldn't say that. I worked my tail off.
But you were there.
I was there.
It kept working.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you're paid for.
But I never went to Fort Huachuca.
Oh, you did not?
No.
I kind of wondered.
After everybody got their orders, all of a sudden we get pulled in to I forget. It was at school. And they said, well, we gave you all these orders. There's 6 of you, but we need 5 of you to volunteer for this other assignment. And I'm like, I ain't volunteering. I ain't going to give up my... So, and nobody did.
Right.
Because you always know, don't volunteer. Yeah. So they came back and I didn't get selected. I was like, yeah, great. So I'm going to go to Fort Huachuca. Then all of a sudden I got called in. The first sergeant says, can't send you to Fort Huachuca. I said, why? Well, one of the guys had a problem for the assignment. And I said, well, what's the assignment? Oh, you got to go to Fort Bragg. I'm like, Fort Bragg? That's the home of the airborne. What the heck am I going to do there?
Mm-hmm.
There's no satellite stations in a plane that come flying out on a parachute. Oh. Well, this is a special assignment. And you need a top secret clearance. And one of the guys automatically told us about a problem he had in his past. So he can't pass it. But we think you can. So I said, so now I'm going to Fort Bragg. Yeah, you are.
I wondered if you had the top secret just for your job, but it sounds like not. Depends on the assignment that you have.
It was what it was is, it was more of a tactical unit. It wasn't a strategic site. We had a 20-foot parabolic antenna that we'd have to put up, and we had, small vans that we fit the equipment in, the down converters, up converters, modems, multiplexer, all the equipment you need, the transmitter. So we could fit it in, a van that can fit in the back of a deuce and a half. And then we had a maintenance hut like that. So we had they were 2 5-tons because it was heavy. So they had to give us 5 tons. So, and what it was is it was a DITB, what they call DITB, a digital imagery test bed. So, and it was fairly new. And then there was all kinds of equipment, that was associated with it. And we were on Fort Bragg, we were like secured in a chain link fence with razor wire and everything. And we had MPs that would man the gate where you can get in and out. And you always had to show your identification to get in and out. And a lot of those guys, that support or anything can't get in there. So it was interesting. It was an interesting job. So I don't know. Oh, and one of the things before I left AIT training, one of the sergeants that went through AIT training with us, she didn't get picked for anything. I had to she had Korea. She wanted to go to Korea. So I had to help her get her truck out to her grandparents in Las Vegas. So I took some time off, took that truck out for her in Las Vegas, and her grandfather, he was a World War I vet.
Oh, wow.
But he didn't get to go over there. They were loading up grenades to put in the truck to transport. And one of the grenades went off and took his hand off.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and when I was with our grandmother and Sherman, we stopped at this, I think it was in Eau Claire. There was a couple of relatives there. And, I was staying pretty silent, but I'd always look at the one guy because he didn't have a hand. So finally he says, "You wondering why I don't have a hand, right?" I'm shaking my head. He says, "Oh, it was a wood cutting accident. Chopped my hand off."
Wow. You hear about fingers quite often, but a whole hand.
And I'm looking like, an axe? How do you do that? I can't figure that out. Later on, they told me, "Oh, no, he was in World War I. He lost it on the battlefield. Lost his, hand." Like, I guess he just didn't want to talk about it.
Didn't want to talk.
No.
No questions after that.
Nope. Oh, and that's like, we were talking about Bert Bignell earlier, as a kid. Got to meet him. He was a World War II vet. He was in the 32nd National Guard unit from Wisconsin. That was the first over into Australia. First in battle against the Japanese on New Guinea. And there's books written about it. And they went through some really tough times. And he wouldn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And I told you, the only thing he would say was the loneliest feeling he ever had is when that Navy was leaving him there. Because one of the sailors says, "We don't know when we'll be back to pick you up."
Oh. That's a sinking feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Especially at the beginning of a conflict.
Right.
You don't have any idea what's going on.
Nope. And they didn't know that, the Japanese soldiers that were on these islands, they just watched the monkeys, and whatever the monkeys could eat, they could eat. But we didn't know that. So there was a lot of starvation, a lot of extreme conditions.
Sure.
So, yeah, but he was pretty silent on that, but he treated me great, when we went out fencing. I was a little kid, so.
Because he was a hired hand at our grandparents'?
Yep, he was a hired hand, and I remember he'd always roll his own cigarettes. He'd have that pipe tobacco, and I think it was Prince Albert. There's a lot of cans that were around Grandma's there from the tins that he left, and he'd roll it up, and he'd start smoking it. And if he didn't have an ashtray, he'd always cuff the bottom of his pants, and he'd just put the ashes in there.
I've heard that before. I wonder if it was that same story.
Yeah.
But I've heard that where somebody just put it in the cuff.
Yep, that was Bert. He would do that. He was very conscientious about things like that.
Sure.
But yeah, and to fight off the demons at night, to sleep, he'd have to drink. Mm-hmm. But, he went through a lot. I mean, to survive from New Guinea at the beginning of the war to all the way to the invasion of Okinawa and still be able to fight. I mean, he was one of 300 out of the 3,000. That is incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But see, you get to meet all kinds of good people.
Yep. There just wasn't near the help for people back then, veterans, than what there is now, but hopefully things keep progressing.
Hopefully, because you need it.
Well, the PACT Act went through, a while back, and I haven't read all the details, but you get information from the VA and where they're urging people, even if you've been in looking at benefits, go back in and look, because there's more available.
Yeah.
So how many years did you spend in the Army?
I spent 4. When I got to Fort Bragg, and of course they sent out the FBI to look into your background, and I'd hear from friends back home, "Hey, what's the FBI doing asking questions about you?" I said, "Don't worry about it. I didn't do anything too bad.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah. I'm okay. So, yeah, they asked a bunch of questions, and yeah, lo and behold, they gave me that top secret special background investigative clearance and got to work on the satellite equipment. And we did really well. I mean, we kept the thing running all the time. We didn't have any downtime, which is unusual. One of the links we had was with I'm not going to say what base,
Sure.
but they had an outage, and they tried to pin it on us, but we could prove that it was them that dropped the link because all of our equipment was good. And we learned quite a bit about the digital side of it because that was coming out, and that was put in a lot of our vans. So, we could align the modems. We could work on the multiplexer real quick, just swapping out a card a lot of times, send the card out and get it fixed, and back it came. So we didn't have any downtime. We had one problem when we were on an exercise in the Florida Panhandle. I think what air base is that? I think that was
Eglin?
Yes. They had big exercise there. So they had to set up our compound. They had all kinds of razor wire, and then they had MPs with dogs going around, and then they had a point where they could get through. Well, the Navy SEALs, they had to take over this site next to ours. It was kind of abandoned. It was just an exercise. Well, a couple of them thought they would be pretty smart, and they'd come in and take our compound. The MPs were on them so fast, and they were still going to come in, and the MP warned them, I got a loaded gun here, and I will shoot you, or the dog will chew you. What's your choice? So they left. Yeah, it was like, whoa. But I didn't get to go convoy with them. I had to fly down there with them because when we were packing up for this exercise, one of the guys took out the wrong bolt, smashed my hand.
Oh, geez.
So I had to go to the doctor, get it fixed. I was supposed to have an operation to get the hand right, but they said, no, I'm mission critical. Just put a cast on it, put a brace on the finger, and he's good to go.
And now you sit today with issues.
Yep. Yeah. But what do you do? You're government property.
Yep.
You don't get to argue.
And you're young.
Yep. You'll heal. Got that broken leg? Walk it off.
Yeah. For some reason, I was thinking you were in the Army for like 9 years or something like that.
No.
4 years.
4 years.
I mean, nothing wrong with that for sure.
No. And
you served.
Yeah. I didn't mind it. I got E5 in 2.5 years. They signed the waiver for time so that I could get it. And I had enough points for the board that I could get E6. But I'm like, that's pretty cool. It'll be a while before I can get that. I'm like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. So eventually I have this other project that I got to do. I got picked for, and it was tactical satellite control. So they have a van, kind of a semi van, hooks up to a tractor, and in it is all the equipment you need to control the satellite. And by that means the different powers from the different satellite stations, even tactical ones, and how much power they can put up to that bird. And you got to watch it, because if somebody puts too much power up there, you can fry that satellite. That's expensive. So we did that. We worked with it. And after we trained on it, I got to do the testing at Fort Detrick, Maryland. So I went there TDY. We did a lot of tests every day, and everything was working out really well. So my orders were to go to Germany, Karlsruhe, Germany. And I had like 7 months left. And they sent me 7 or 8 months. I forget exactly when I got over there. I took vacation and went home before I went over. And so I got over there, and I'm in a support unit. And the equipment didn't come. They had an issue, even though it passed the test and everything. So I'm like, well, so now we don't have anything to do. And so we're in the support unit in this barracks, and, we go to formation, and then we meet, we set in this work area that they gave us, this building. So like me, they sent to launch duel to the satellite station there with a couple of the other guys to work on their digital equipment because they knew we were pretty good. We had a lot of good training on it. So I got to go to launch duel and work on that. That was pretty fun. Finally, I got to go to
Say it again. You're in Germany.
I'm in Germany.
Beer.
Oh, yeah. That's where I got my beeroids. That's where I finally gained a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I was skinny. Oh, you go down to those guest houses, give you a big old mug of beer. One place give you a big old steak and potatoes. Like in heaven.
Me gaining the weight, it's like right here.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Back then it was like it just didn't stay on very, very well. So,
yeah.
But Germany was fun. I traveled. I met a Korean War fighter pilot. He was working as a contractor on the base, and we'd talk. And we went down to like a city south of us, and I'm trying to remember. I can't. But they had a castle with a museum in it, with a lot of old medieval stuff, and going through there was pretty cool. And he would talk about how he met a fighter pilot from Germany during that was in World War II. Well, him being a pilot, he says, I got to find out if this guy's for real. So when you fly over Berlin, you can see certain things from the sky. Mm-hmm. So he asked, they were talking and asking questions back and forth. And he said, yeah, he was the real deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. He even flew some of the jets that the Germans had, that Messerschmitt. He flew that. Mm. So it was, and he would talk about Korea and, some of the flights over there. And yeah, he was pretty good. And then we did a few other things, traveling around. I took a trip down to Italy to see the guy that I went to AIT training with. Well, he was a head. He was down there, and I talked to him because they were trying to get me to reenlist, and they said, well, since you're here in Germany and you don't have your equipment, we'll either send you to Pisa, Italy, or Berlin. Both have pretty good satellite stations there. Mm-hmm. So I was talking to him about Italy. He said, no, don't do it. Don't do it. He says, not a lot to do. You're just sitting there and you're going through your maintenance records and stuff like that. So I said, well, I'll have to go to Berlin if I want to stay in. And I'm like, I know a couple, one person that was behind us in class, she went to Berlin. And I think there was another one that we knew that was there in Berlin. So I thought, well, maybe I will. Because and then I got a $20,000 bonus if I reenlist, but it had to be for 4 years. And I'm like, Then you're getting in there where, so that you get that 10 years, you can't. You got to stay for the retirement. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm thinking about it. Well, in the meantime, I go back to my duty station in Carlsruhe, and they have an exercise and they're out in the field. So I've had do charge of quarters quite often. So one night I'm doing charge of quarters, and then comes the lieutenant, the XO, and she says, I'm going to be here up in my office. So if I get a call, come up and get me. Well, I didn't know that the first sergeant also came, and he was up in her office. Well, I didn't know they were having an affair.
Oh, geez.
So
that's where my brain was going, and you confirmed it.
So her husband calls, a captain. I said, sir, I'll go up and get her. Tell you got a phone. I go up there. Oh, yeah, they're having an affair, all right. I'm like, I don't care. Whatever.
Not your deal.
Not my deal. I just tell her, ma'am, you got a phone call. And then I leave. Well, they started harassing me. And I'm like, why? If I do re-enlist, I'm going to Berlin. If I don't, I'm going back home. And one of the captain that was supposed to be with us in this project, he's there too, because no equipment. He's just waiting for an assignment, and he knows what's going on. So he says, well, go talk to the company commander and take somebody with you. So I take this guy, Dwayne, with me that, is what the project was with us. And I go in and talk to the captain, the company commander. And I tell him what was going on. I just said, I just want to be left alone. It's their deal, whatever. It's up to you, whatever you want to do, but just tell them to leave me alone. So I get out and I go to go back, start doing whatever we have to do. Most of the time playing handball, racquetball. So all of a sudden the next day I get called in, and the captain outright accused me of trying to go out with the lieutenant. I'm like, are you serious? I never asked her out. I never would. She's married. I don't do that.
Officer, enlisted.
That's the other part.
So many things that are wrong.
That's the other part. No, if I want to make this career, that's a career killer. So, I'm like, God, I'm not going to get any support here. So that captain, he comes to me. His last name's Ford. Captain Ford comes to me and he says, the IG for battalions here. I got a meeting with you, for you. So I go tell him what's going on. Boom. Not too long afterwards, there's a court martial. I'm like, holy crap, I didn't want this. I just wanted the harassment to stop. And I'm like, oh God. So I'm getting grilled, beforehand. And then I have to go and testify. So they had everybody there. And the platoon sergeant, he's from the motor pool, E7. He looks at me, he says, Wakefield? I said, yes. He says, I don't know if you're the dumbest guy on the planet or you got balls bigger than this earth, but I just want to shake your hand.
Wow.
So he shakes my hand. He says, good luck. And I go up there and I testify. Day later it comes back, what they're going to do. And I get called in. And like Captain Ford, he's the one that's going to give me the news. He said, they're reassigning the lieutenant. They're reassigning the first sergeant. But General Starry's not going to go any further than that, because not only did the company commander know about the affair, the battalion commander knew about it, and the brigade commander knew about it.
Surprise, right?
Right. And he said, if that general relieves all three of them, it's a career killer. So you're going to stay quiet about this. Nobody's going to harass you. And the issue's done.
Which is what you wanted.
Yeah.
To begin with, without all the hoopla.
Right. I didn't want the hoopla. I didn't want that to happen. And it puts a lot of stress on you because,
Well, I was going to talk about your age anyway. I mean, you're young. You're right out of high school. You go through the training.
Yep.
And the stuff that you're talking.
I'm 21 years old.
Sounds so technical to me, especially compared to what I went into in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And just nonchalant. And you're getting picked for these different assignments.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that some of that is based on, how well you did in your training.
Right.
Retention.
Yep.
Scores, placement in the class, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And all this stuff is working for you. And then this
happens. Yeah. But before that, there was an interesting exercise that I got picked for with some others. And we'll put some pictures of it.
Sure.
On the podcast. But they wanted to see how support units, if there's a war, how we would fare behind the enemy lines. We'd be trapped behind the enemy lines. We had a pickup truck and a deuce and a half. And we're like a mile behind enemy lines. And the other kicker was that we had females with us, soldiers. And so for 2 weeks, we're out in the field, and they had different areas that we had to go to, and we got attacked by, they're supposed to be Russian, but they're actually French troops that were also training. It was all coordinated with other foreign troops. We also had French Canadian commandos come after us. We had marches. We got to interact with one of the partisans from Russia. He was during the World War II, he was a partisan fighter for Russia. And he was really interesting. And we had to do some trades. And like one night, our dinner was a couple of chickens live. So I was about the only one that knew how to, get the feathers off, got some hot water, put it in there and start plucking, cut the head off, cut it, everything, and cook it up. It was a pretty good meal.
Yeah. And
during that exercise, there was one guy that was picked. He was from the 18th Airborne Corps. So he was a Rambo.
Sure.
Oh, he thought he knew everything. And we had to go, in this one area, there's a bunch of buildings. So we had to go all the way around and scout it and see who's there and what's there. Well, and then come back and report. Well, he says, well, you stay here when we got to the other side. My group of 3. I'm supposed to go back. His group of 3 went back. And we had to stay there. But we watched him go in and hit this one building. I forget which guy. It was one of his guys in the group because he's got them all worked up. Rah, rah, rah. They threw a concussion grenade in it. The guy didn't wait for the grenade to go off. He went in. Comes out,
Oops.
staggering. He's got dirt all over him. I'm like, God. And then so Randy, he's a staff sergeant that was supposed to be with us when these vans came and everything. He's also trained in 26 Yankee, the satellite ground station equipment repairman. And he's got the designate of satellite controller. That's the other thing I have is satellite controller designate. So he asked me, he says, what happened? You were supposed to be back there with us. I said that, he's a staff sergeant from the 82nd. I said, he told us to stay here. I got to follow his order. I know, but I gave you the order to come back. I know, and I argued with him. But he said, no, I had to stay here with my group. So he went over and talked to him and berated him. Well, the next day, we had there was a compound of French Canadian commandos. So he had to go take his group and go scout it and come back. Well, they thought they would be smart, and they threw an artillery simulator into the compound where the truck was. And immediately those French commandos captured the two of his guys. He started running down the lane towards us. So he's coming running down the lane, giving us away. So I shot him. Not real, but it was.
So I shot him. I like that.
It was a blank, but there's people there that, oh, you're dead.
Right.
And so I'm just waiting because I know the French commandos are coming. And sure enough, I could see the one guy coming down, just trucking fast down the lane. And I'm behind this big tree. So I just get behind it and I could hear him come up to it. And I come around and I had the barrel of my gun right at the back of his head. Just click. Yeah. But we got overrun because he brought them to us.
So they were the kind of blanks or whatever that didn't have some kind of concussion come out.
Right.
Anyway,
because,
so it wasn't going to hurt him by having it right there.
We had the red cap, and it screws into the barrel, and we had blanks in there. He wasn't going to get anything.
Sure.
And then that night, we're camped, and the French troops were coming up. So I got a good position. I'm in this kind of hollow, it's that low-lying area.
Mm-hmm.
I got a tree trunk over top of me and some other stuff, so I'm very hard to find. So these French, the first 2 were coming up there, they didn't know anything about noise discipline, not talking, and their lights, the flashlight and everything. And all of a sudden I just shot off, doo, doo, and they're dead. But after I shot them, one of them pulls one of their grenades, play grenades, threw it, hit me right in the helmet, and it bounces away. Thank goodness, because it's baby powder. I don't need that all over me.
Yeah.
So I just get down real low, and then the rest they took off, and and then the next night I got to go with the two that I have. We got to go in this one compound where the vehicles are for the French. So we went down there and scouted that, put some charges out on their vehicles, got into the woods, let them off. And then we knew the company commander for this unit, the French. So we went in and talked to him, because they said we could, because it was over and they were getting out of the field. So they're having their big celebration. Their big celebration, which we should have, is wine, cognac, different things, and a good feast. So he invited us in.
That's cool.
Oh, yeah. So we drank and ate.
So often did you do exercises that were that? It just sounds like a pretty big exercise.
No, it was kind of a small one.
Really?
We'll post some pictures.
Sure.
And it was just to see mostly psychological, how people would react in that. And, we did really well. They liked the results, except for a few of the gung-ho. That staff sergeant from the 82nd really kind of ruined it.
Right.
Because he couldn't listen and thought he could take on the world. Yeah. Well, his two buddies paid for it, when they threw that artillery simulator in it. When the French Canadian commandos caught him, they threw him down in the mud, made him all around in the mud.
Make him a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was cold during this exercise. One morning we woke up and there was we're frost covered, and because it's in the foothills of the Alps. We're up in the Black Forest, kind of up in a higher elevation.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was a good experience, and there was no problem with the males and the females there, and the fighting and everything. I mean, it wasn't real fighting, but it was pretty eye opening.
Well, you're supposed to train like you fight.
Yep.
And that's one thing I've seen in Air Force exercises. It's hard to bring the realism for people to react with like they would in the real deal.
Right.
And I remember talking to my shop once, and I was like, you know what? When we were little kids, we would have fought to have fun like this. Now they're paying us. They're probably seeing through my BS, I suppose. And they'll probably never see this, but but trying to motivate them and so when something goes off, you dive under the table. Well, you really dive under the tables. Yeah. And it's you got a guard drill weekend. It's long. People are tired. They're going to go back to the regular jobs. Sometimes it's hard to get those reactions that you try to get. But just one story on diving under a table that I'll tell. My first trip to Iraq, we had General Rand was running the place at Balad, and he flew with us some. And there would be mortars coming in out of the base on occasion, but they also had what's called controlled detonations, controlled dets. So if they brought any IEDs onto the base, or if they had hard drives they had to destroy, they would blow them up like in the middle of the airfield. Right. Well, they would warn you about those. They're supposed to. Yeah. Well, General Rand's getting ready along with our pilots, and boom. And we all look at each other and we're like, what the? And we all jump under the tables, and then I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me like, we all knew it sounded like a controlled det. Yeah. But we're like, they didn't say anything. Radios, any of that stuff. Right. And so he belly crawls, and he gets over and he reaches up to my desk, grabs the phone, he calls in. And, while it's ringing, he looks at me, he says, well, if that's not a controlled det, they're getting really good, he goes. But yeah, so that was my realism story for jumping under tables. But it's hard to get people motivated for an exercise
Right.
sometimes to
Yep.
act as you should,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that it's ingrained in you. So when you are overseas or in
Yep.
whatever conflict, that you operate properly.
Oh yeah. I mean, in that exercise, everybody took it seriously to hide, try to, not be seen, and move when we can. Except for one guy and then his two guys, it was tough to keep them reined in. Otherwise, I think we would have went a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned how to set tripwire explosives. Where you put it up on a tree, you run the tripwire down and across, and then so we knew when they were coming. We'd hear it wasn't a real explosion. It was the whistle and the different bangs and that. So, and then they got the training too, to start looking for tripwires. So
that stuff sounds more fun than what I was
what you
doing
did
in the Air Force. We had our things that we had to do, and the career field I had was, taking care of everything the pilots wear, helmets, masks, G-suits, pack survival kits, parachutes, give them survival training somewhat.
Yep.
Because we didn't quite have SEER guys in the Air Guard yet. They'd help us out some. But, yeah, and then we ended up getting encrypted radios a little bit later. So we got a little bit more technical on that. But we're basically, inside the wire, protect your area.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty fun, being out in the woods and setting the tripwires and all that.
It was. And it was roughing it. I mean, there was a compound where there was buildings. We got to sleep in one of those one night. Most of the time it was, you set up your shelter half and you sleep in there. Or you could dig, and there was an area where we could dig foxholes. So we could kind of get in that and get in our sleeping bag. And that night was cold. And then one morning there was the French had a big black cauldron of coffee. And I mean, it was thick. It was coffee, but we got to get some. And I mean, it was nice and hot. You just drank that. And it was a welcome addition to that. So.
Yeah, because when it's that cold, you don't sleep.
No.
You really don't.
No.
10 minutes at a time.
Yep.
Cowboy coffee. Throw a horseshoe in it and it'll stand up.
Well, I think that ladle that they put in there would stand up.
Yeah.
Especially
Shove it down in there.
Oh, yeah, especially at the bottom. It was nice and thick.
Kept you awake, though. Even, you don't sleep all night. You need that.
Right. And then one of the French soldiers came over because they wanted my field jacket. I said, you got to give me yours in a better fit. So I tried it on and it fit fine. And he says, well, can I have your hat? I said, sure. Give me your hat. And they have that rim that comes down, and that was to shield their eyes in case there's a nuclear blast so they don't go blind, supposedly.
Yeah.
But who knows if that would really help. Maybe just made them feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all you need.
Right. give them
get
hope.
You to go do your job.
Yep. But yeah, it was fun doing it. And then running up some of those hills, because you're up in the foothills, so the oxygen is less. So I'm like, God, I'm in really good shape. I can do this.
Yeah.
You're trying to get up that hill. And one time we were in a pasture and there's cows just kind of looking at us like, who are these clowns?
Doubling over, trying to breathe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that altitude, that'll get you. I was on a snowmobile trip once with my brother and some family in Wyoming, and I couldn't believe how much the altitude, I don't know if we were at maybe about 10,000, something like that, but wow.
Yep.
And the headache, the thirsty, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Then you're trying to exert yourself.
Yep, you're trying to run. And, it was tough. But, like I said, pretty good. So, and then going forward, after they told me their ruling, I'm like, so they're going to put a first sergeant in, a different one, who knows what happened. And he's not going to trust me.
So that seems wrong right to begin with.
Right.
How many they could choose from? Send somebody that doesn't know anything about what went on.
He did. He knew, because he knew that other first sergeant.
Great.
And I have the same company CO. And I'm like, this goes all the way up to top command level.
Mm-hmm.
I can go to Berlin, but they know where I am. They know who I am. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to give up that 20,000 and I'll do something else. And the other thing too was, if I spend another 4 years, you know, and sometime I'd like to start a family, I don't want to move them around.
Right.
I want to stay.
Been there, done that.
Yep. I want to make sure they can grow up with friends and do things. So they didn't get to go with a lot of cool places I got to go, but they have childhood friends and things like that. So
in your 4 years, you had 2 or 3 assignments?
I had, I don't know how, well, I went TDY quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah. I went into basic training, went to AIT in Fort Gordon. While I was waiting to go to Fort Bragg, they trained me on satellite control. So I got that designation. And then after that, they sent me up to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, to train on the equipment that we were going to use at Fort Bragg. So I was in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. That was pretty cool because the contractors they had there, the teachers, some of them worked for the company that made this van, you know, and all the equipment, put all the equipment together. And a couple of times we went to a Yankees game. One was against the Minnesota Twins. And we went to a couple of bars. We went to the Stone Pony, what's his face's? Now I can't think of his name. No. Born in the USA.
Oh, way out east. Here, I got Minnesota in my head.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen. Yep. So went there. Yep. Did some drinking, kamikazes, and because those guys
kind of like me when I'm trying to say his last name.
Yeah. No, that's the one thing about the military too, is sometimes you get to drinking because there's some downtime. You know, you're waiting, or to blow off some steam or whatever. So we had some pretty good parties out there. So I'll get down to Fort Bragg. Wonderful place. Nope. No. But, you know, we're in this compound, and even though all our equipment's air conditioned, nice and cool, you know, we can escape into that. And there's a lot of vans that, you know, support it because, you know, we're running pictures. I don't know how much I can say. I know what I
default to less.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot, you know, other equipment. We have military intelligence there, people that, you know, go through and make reports. We had the highest supply designation that you could have, even higher than the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And you talk about jealousy. They took that away from us.
Based on jealousy, not strategic operations.
Right. Well, and we had a lot of like politicians and higher ups, you know, military higher ups that would come and tour because it was unique. It was one of a kind. And so, I mean, to me, it was like, it's just a bunch of electronics. We communicate. We can provide an intelligence report within a half hour of running the stuff. I mean, we were quick, and that one, hopefully we saved lives. Then they knew what to expect if, you know, something goes up. They wanted to see if our equipment could survive a parachute drop. And our captain said, there's no way you're going to drop that. That's a lot of money.
Right.
And we said, there's no way. It'd take us a week to get it all back up and running. by the time we realign everything. So wherever we'd go, they'd have to get an airstrip and drop us off and then get us in there somehow. Because we were part of the rapid deployment force. So when the siren goes off, which it did one time, we all rush in, grab our bag, and then start tearing down our equipment. And yeah, they even had troops already on the planes and going over. I was like, holy crap. And it was real. But
Right.
then everything was smoothed out. So that was lucky.
Yeah. And, when you talk about tearing down your equipment, I think about our mobility packages, and we had ours. We had a certain designated amount of time that we were, once the whistle went off, that we were supposed to be like airborne. And in my shop, it was a small shop, but we had a lot of stuff. And at one time, I had, I think, 5 pallet positions worth of equipment. And I'm thinking about your deal with all that high test equipment and the wires and just when you packed that up, it did, like, all the different pieces have different cases of their own, and then places for the wires where you absolutely knew where everything was. Or was it wasn't kind of a hodgepodge?
Nope. It was everything had cases, or some ways of, you can get them on a truck real quick and then get that truck on over to Pope Air Force Base and get it on a plane. I mean, we could do it within 24 hours. We could pack up and be on, before 20. We didn't even need 24 hours. I mean, we got so good at breaking down the equipment and packing it in. We knew exactly where it goes, So we could be gone wherever.
And was there any way to practice that packing up without tearing down the real stuff, or was that your only practice?
When we first initially set it up, when we had training on doing it, if we knew there was downtime, we could always take it down. We had another backup antenna that we could put on top of the one hut, take down the big one, and use the smaller one. But we didn't practice that much, but we knew, because we'd go through and we knew, we had, I wouldn't say it's pallets, but it's hard to describe where you can put all the legs but they had it all packed. We could pack it up, and I think there was like four sets, and that dish was all taken down. That's the biggest one, was getting the big 20-foot parabolic dish down. The rest of the stuff we can do real quick. And we had a lot of stuff in the other van, the maintenance van, and we could have that packed in no time. And then the regular van with all the equipment in, it's all bolted in and everything. So we didn't have to do much with that. And then take the wires off. There's just a few, that run to the antennas and then the power. So, yeah, it was quick because we had to be. So
Figured a lot of thought had to go into the design of that equipment for mobility, especially being like a first responder type operation.
Yep. And here I am with a cast on, and they were doing filming also of us taking that stuff down. So on some training film, there's this character with a cast.
Who should still be over in hospital.
Yeah.
But he's out here with a cast on.
Yep. Doing my job.
Salute, click your heels. There we go.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was Fort Bragg. I would go to the Smoky Mountains when I could get a chance, or, a couple of times we went to Myrtle Beach, when we had time off.
Right.
Just to get away. Because it's hot down there.
Yeah.
Ugh. Fort Gordon too, where you train, that gets pretty hot. Oh.
The older I got, the less I could take that heat.
Yeah, back then I could take it. Now I don't want to. No, just put me in the air conditioner.
Yeah, we're in the basement right now. We ran the air conditioner all day, so
it's fantastic down here.
Yeah, well, I did shut it off so it wouldn't kick on behind my right shoulder here. But yeah, it's nice and cool down here.
Yeah, yep. So, but yeah, it was an interesting experience. The Army was. So, the two things that really got me was, the incident with, a first sergeant and a lieutenant, and it was a female lieutenant. She was in the class of West Point. That was the first female
Really?
class that graduated. Yeah.
Oh my word.
So I was going up against a stack deck,
Mm-hmm.
but I stuck to my guns, and I had integrity. I was honest, and they couldn't do anything against me. So that's
And
important.
if they just wouldn't have harassed you in the first place,
Right.
it would have been just fine.
Yeah. Just leave me alone.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm either going to go to Berlin, and I was seriously thinking about going, getting that $20,000 and sending it home and
Right.
spending some time in Berlin. I could see the sights,
Well, and you talked about the 8-year mark. You're not quite at 10.
Right.
So I've always looked at the 12-year mark a little bit more than the 8-year mark.
Yeah.
But then now, there were other reenlistment lengths besides 4 years now.
Yep.
Now there's a lot of 6s now when you're early. I think, I don't know if the Army was a little more flexible on like some of the 2-year enlistments, or were they pretty much straight up?
It depends on the
4s?
MOS and how much training.
Okay, I wondered about that.
Yeah, because like cooks, I think they could go in for like 2 years, and I can't say what other ones there were, but I know there was some 2-year enlistments. One of the guys, was that in basic training? One of the cooks that was at the unit, I'd talk to him once in a while, and he didn't have anything going on in his private life, so when he went in, he listed for 6.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was 6. It was either 4 or 6, but I think he said 6. I knew it was a long time. I said, you could have went for 2. Yeah.
And he knew that?
Yeah. But I think that's the most money he had ever made.
Right.
So he stayed in. And then in basic training, one of the guys, he was from Mississippi, Nattle McGee. He couldn't read and write very well. He just enough to pass to get in.
Mm-hmm.
So he would always want me. He'd come to me. He says, I need to write a letter to my mom. Okay. Just tell me what you want, and I'd write it out for him. And then she'd send a letter back, and then I'd read it to him.
That's cool.
Yeah. And he was going into supply. And I said, and are you happy with going in the Army? Oh, yeah. He says, back in Mississippi, I wouldn't make this kind of money.
Right.
So I don't know whatever happened to him. I hope he had a good long career and retired and is doing well.
And you have to have people like that are okay, doing those types of jobs and are just ready to serve.
Yeah.
To just serve. It's kind of like, there was some training that they started giving us, personality training and stuff in the Air Force, and they'd combine different ones. But there was a name for those type of people, solid citizens. You need a percentage of this kind of worker, this type,
Yep.
and the solid citizen.
Yeah.
And that's the person that's just come in, do your job, don't bother me after hours,
Right.
and I will give you my best.
Yep.
Sounds like he's one of those.
Oh, yeah. And, they team me up with a buddy. So my buddy was also somebody that was kind of challenged. He was going into supply also, Matty. And the drill sergeant says, just get him through. It's your job. Get him through. So I'd have to pull him along. And one time I was helping it out one morning and I forgot to shave.
Oh,
and
a little busy.
In the day that the first sergeant decided to do an inspection. So he's going along and I'm like, oh, he's going to come to me and I know I'm going to get nailed. Comes up and gets right in front of me and he looks at me. Says, Private Wakefield, why didn't you shave this morning? And I just said, no excuse, First Sergeant. And that First Sergeant just paused, kind of looked. Then he looks over at the 2 drill sergeants, Keys and Huey. Says, this man's going to go in. He's going to go shave. He's going to come back out, get back in formation, and nothing's going to happen to him. He says, I like that he gave me no excuse.
Nice.
I had no excuse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted to make sure that Maddie got everything done. He was running behind. And so I didn't have a chance. And I'm like, well, and I kind of forgot about it. And that's what happened. So nothing happened there. And everybody had to pull KP at least once going through basic training.
Mm-hmm.
It was great because I'm like at the very end. And it's the day that we had to get up really early, go out to the field and do the obstacle course. And we were fed out in the field with K rations. So I got out of kitchen patrol. Because then they started, all the people that messed up that had different things going, you know, demerits or whatever you want to call them, they had to start doing KP then. And I'm like, now did I luck out or what? God, I've got a guardian angel working overtime.
I had a similar situation in basic training, and I ended up being one of the squad leaders, one of the 4 that was in a flight. And so, I don't know, there's like 10 to 12 people, and we were all side by side on our cots and stuff. Well, you know, and each evening we were instructed to check all of our guys' lockers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it always had to be just right.
Yep.
And there was something going on that evening, and things just got behind for me and just behind. And I was not able to take the time to even quickly go through everybody's lockers. And we had one guy halfway down my row that had already been washed back. Little guy from West Virginia. Just felt bad for him. He was just a hard case. And then the next morning, and we were in blues now, so that we were in our last week.
Yep.
And Sergeant Beck, Staff Sergeant Beck, E5 in the Air Force, and he comes up and he's in my face, and he asked me if I checked the lockers, and then I said, "No, sir." And he just looks at me, and he's like a head and a half taller than me. I mean, he's built like a brick, you know. And he looks at me, and he just kind of shakes his head in my face and just kind of walks away. And he's walking away, and I have no idea what he's going to do. Is he done with me? Is he going to do something worse? You know, is there something coming? Blah, blah, blah. And I just yelled out, "But I'll stand behind my men, sir." And he's like stopped, spun around, looked at me. He goes, "I like that." But then he comes up to me and he says, "All right, I'm going to go through every Foot Locker, and for every demerit, you give me like 10 push-ups." I think it was 10, not 20 or something like that.
Yep.
But he was going, and he was just enjoying it because he was like, "Give me 20, Bradshaw." He'd throw somebody's shirt on their bed, you know, and then but it wasn't many. It wasn't many.
Yeah.
But this little guy from West Virginia was halfway up, and Sergeant Beck opens it up, and he goes, "Jackpot!" And he starts going out and out, throwing stuff down. And all the other flight, we had 2 different rooms. In the other flight, 2 flights are 2 squads in this one, 2 squads in this one. So all these guys are in their blues lined up just looking, and I'm on the end. And I am doing 250 push-ups in my blues, trying to keep up. As soon as, you know, I'd do them as fast as I could so I could stand back up and rest a little bit before he got to any more demerits. And there were some times where I was just up to my knees, back down, another 50, you know, kind of thing. But I just think of that when he first said, "I like that." And then he says the demerits, and then there's not that many, and then he just yells out, "Jackpot." I was just like, here we go. Boy, I tell you what, though, as soon as he was done and he walked out, my whole squad, they're just like, "You just stay here." And they all just swarmed around this guy and just fixed all of his stuff real quick and stuff. But that was my basic training story. Otherwise, it was pretty benign.
Yeah. Yeah, it was mine. You know, I did well, and I mean, I got through it pretty quick. One of the things in the chow hall, we had to do the monkey bars. So you have to go through, and oh God, I could go through those so quick, drop, and go into the chow hall. Some of those guys, some at the beginning especially, hardly get any rungs and drop. Get back in the back of the line and, keep running through there. But by the end, most of them could fly through it.
Sure.
Pretty quick. Jeez. But I had no problem. I could go through. I can't forget the other guy too that was also fast like I was, just right through. Not a problem. He's like, geez, they should make it harder. No, they shouldn't.
Like your dad said, when they first went through the obstacle course, he and this guy from Iowa went through it so fast that made him go through it again. Like, that's kind of just the opposite of what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Oh, one time we came into the mess hall, it was for lunch, and there was some different troops in there. And then I sat down, and at the table I usually do, but there's like a female here. I'm like, so I like, what are you doing here? She says, well, I'm getting washed out. I said, why? Oh, I tried to shoot my drill sergeant. Oh.
Nothing like honesty.
Yeah. I'm like, wow.
Nice.
I'm like, oh, maybe I should change tables.
Let me just scoot over here.
Yeah, let me get out of here. Exit stage right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of little stories that stick in your head.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then on weekends, we'd find a football, and we'd go out on the playground or the parade ground, and it's rocky little pea rock, and that. Instead of just playing touch football, of course it was tackle.
Sure.
And you got uniform pants that are all tore up. Oh God, they made sure we didn't have any more footballs. Guys getting hurt. Jeez.
Government property, just like you said earlier.
Yeah. Oh, I remember one of the guys on my team. He goes to get through when we're on defense, and this guy was blocking him really good, and all of a sudden he reaches down and grabs him by the belly because he was a little chubby. Just grabs him really hard. Oh man, there was a fight after that. Had to break him up.
It's like messing with somebody's food, right?
Oh yeah. I never got my food messed with in basic training.
Nope.
That was good.
Did they ever give you so much that you couldn't eat it with those orders that
sometimes
your drill instructor gave them?
Sometimes, yeah.
I mean, did they really?
Oh, they
look
really
for you and give you extra?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, one time I was going through and they had oatmeal. I like oatmeal, and so I had a bowl, and I mean it was just one big old scoop and plopped right in there, and I'm going to leave, and he said, "Oh no, you don't." Gets another big scoop, plops it right in there, and it's overflowing. Word. I'm like,
oh no, you don't. I like how you say that.
Yep. And then one time I was going through, and it was eggs, and so usually you get 2 fried eggs, and the head cook was behind the guy who was doing it, eggs, and it's you, give him 4. I'm like, oh God.
Oh man.
Yeah. 4 fried eggs with everything else. I'm like, it ain't helping. I'm still skinny. Let's just quit that.
Did you guys ever have to go run right after eating or any of that kind of stuff?
Sometimes.
So
usually it was
well for you, probably.
Well, sometimes you're a little full and you can feel things slosh around in there. Yep.
Oh, man.
I like playing with the sound effects here a little bit.
Well, at least I didn't poop my pants.
Oh, yeah. It's easy to get dry down here.
Oh, I know. I'm almost done.
Still comfortable, though. Yeah.
You could. Yeah. Well, I got water down there.
Same here.
Yeah.
Mine's way low.
So is mine. I'm in the ice cubes. It's good though.
Yep. So in the 4 years, and you obviously decided not to go to the 8,
Right.
then, did you decide like 6 months before you got out, or 2 months before you got out, or when did you know? And
It was about a month before I got
a
out.
month. Okay.
Yep.
So what planning did you do in that month, or were you just like, focusing on the Army and I'll just cover the other when it gets here?
Well, I decided I'd go to college. Well, I did take some college classes when I was in the Army at night, and through the University of Maryland. I took a business class, English class. Then there was another class. I'm trying to remember where I got this. I think it was when I was at Bragg. I took another college class, and I thought, well, you know what? I might as well just get out and go to college. And I'll go back home. I'll go to the University of Wisconsin River Falls and get a degree. And I wasn't sure what I wanted a degree in at that time. So I did that. I ETS'd out. And then I saw a thing for the Minnesota Air Guard. So I went and joined. I thought, well, heck, that'll help me with college, because I didn't want to go in massive debt. Back then, this was 83, going into 84. Tuition wasn't too bad yet, but I thought, well, that'll help me with college. So I did that. So I went and joined, and it was right up my alley because it was electronic installation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, shoot, I can do that. So I did that. I joined up. Then we went to some really interesting places. Great Falls. We were talking, you were talking about that.
Montana, heading there this fall.
Oh, yep. We had to go and put, run wiring in a new, they were revising a control tower there. So we got to know some of the guys there, and we went white water rafting while we were out there. We did some tours. One of the guys that was with us, him and I rented a car, and we went up to Glacier. Then we went over to the other side to the International Peace Park, climbed a mountain, on your free time on the weekend.
So now they've got the guard base there, and then they'll have Malmstrom Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
Were you at Malmstrom when you went out there, or was it working for the guard base?
The Malmstrom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was regular Air Force.
Okay.
That was there. And, you see them going out to missile sites even, some of the guys. And then we went to Helena down at the state capitol. We'd go traveling around but we'd work, we'd get our stuff done. I forget, it was 2 weeks we were there, I think. Then we went down to Arizona, down to southern Arizona. Oh God, I don't remember the Air Force base there. I got pictures they had a couple of planes out there. But then we went over to Mexico, put on civilian clothes, go and buy some cheap, leather goods and that.
We used to be able to do that. We'd go to, what was it? Nogales, Mexico, down south of Tucson.
Okay.
Because they have an air guard there in Tucson, but they also have Davis-Monthan Air Force Base,
Mm-hmm.
and they had an area for snowbirds. So since we would cancel flying up here so often with the weather, each year we'd go somewhere down south.
Yep.
In the winter and fly for a couple of weeks to get caught up on sorties. And at that time, we were allowed to go to Nogales and cross the border and shop.
Yep.
But one little story there, it's all about bickering and stuff. And you didn't want to get off the beaten path, but you had 3 or 4 blocks worth of where you could go shopping.
Right.
And I remember walking by, and there's this little guy talking to this older lady, American lady, and they're haggling. And then we went down a block or two, and then we came back. And I'm walking back, and the same lady is there, And all I saw was right at the end, and the little Mexican guy goes, "Lady, how much for my soul?" So she was really talking him down, and he got to the point where he wasn't going to make any money. And he's like, "Come on, lady."
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But it was fun shopping down in there in Mexico. You stay close, you know.
Yep. And you can haggle with them.
Mm-hmm.
Start low.
Yep.
Kind of meet in the middle. Yeah. And we'd buy stuff. And then one time we were going through, and one of the U.S. Officials was standing there, and he says, did you get anything in Mexico? And I said, yeah, just dysentery. He laughed, and he says, oh, go ahead.
Dysentery. Yeah, and where we were at, you could just walk across,
yeah,
you know, the border, and they had the driving areas and stuff, but there was a lot of foot traffic.
Yeah, we convoyed down there.
Mm-hmm.
And the only problem with that is our vehicles didn't have air conditioning.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about the heat again.
Oh, roll down the window. Oh, that's a blast furnace coming at us. Roll it back up. Oh, I'm kind of baking in here. So you just a little bit where you can get airflow. Oh, that was miserable.
Yeah.
Ooh. And then you're looking out there, you know, where we're at, and you could see the air, or, you know, the water just going up from the pool, going into the air. I'm like, oh. And you try to take a cold shower?
Nope. Warm water.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, you can't even cool off here.
Yeah, no relief.
No. And the air guard was fun. There was I was getting done with school, and there was an opportunity to become a navigator.
Because it was a C-130 unit.
Yep.
Still is.
Yep. So I'm like, well, that'd be fun. And I got the degree. All I have to do is take the test. So I took the test. And that was out at Great Falls. I took the test. They set it up for me and everything so that I could apply for this. And I got done with the test. And a little while later, I'm like, they called me and they said, hey, you got the job. I'm like, cool. That'd be fantastic. So they're getting me all set up and everything, and run the paperwork through, and started in January of 87. I think it was. Well, anyway, I just turned 26 in November. And they come back to me and said, we can't take you. I'm like, why? Because you're already 26. We can't waive the time. You have to be less than 26.
Really?
Yeah. And we can't waive it. We really want you, but we can't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, dang. So close. Missed it by that much.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. It would have been fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, flying around, going to different places, you know. But that's life.
Right.
You know, there's some opportunities and some doors get shut in front of you. So, yeah. So I getting close to the end of school, so I decided, well, I want my weekends back. I'm going to exit stage right. Kind of missed it because, you know, some of the traveling and that we got to go to. So, Oh, the commander of our unit, his colonel, he was one of the first Americans that went to Hiroshima after the bomb went off. He was pretty cool to talk to.
Huh.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, when I first got into South Dakota Air Guard, after I was in the Air Force for 2.5 years, our squadron commander was a Vietnam fighter pilot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when you and I were in our early stages, there were still some of those guys around in your guard units and stuff, which was really cool.
Yeah. Yep. You get to meet a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
I met, that was when I was in Germany. We had a guy that, with the satellite control, he was in Turkey when we had troops in there. He went way back in. He had an Ethiopian wife. She was a really good cook. Oh, yeah. Anyway, he said, yeah, Turkey. You'd have all the Turkish troops coming over to eat in our mess hall whenever they could because it was better food. But he said, brutal. You fall asleep as a Turkish soldier, on guard duty, you never wake up because they just shoot you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You can't even fake like you were praying when you get woke up.
No.
Wow, shoot you.
He said, I saw it. He says, he saw the guy over there who was sleeping. He was on guard duty. And the officer just came up with his handgun, shot him in the head.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, that's a little brutal.
Man.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to hear that.
When he told me, I was like, you sure? Oh, yeah. He says, I knew the guy because he'd come over and eat in their mess hall. And said, just like that.
Wow. Next thing you know, you're in the afterlife.
Yeah. Yep. That's for sure.
Wow. So then how long were you in the Air Guard then?
Oh, God, I forget how many years it was.
Because you're full Army.
Yep. And so it was 4.5 years. So I was right at the 8 and almost 9 years.
Okay. So that's where my brain went to the 9.5. That was your whole military career, not just Army.
Yeah, there was one where I went, they said this recruiter called me for the Army Reserve. And he said, you can try it. You can leave at any time if you don't like it. So I got in this unit. And, well, I reported to the wrong unit, but they kept me, did the paperwork. And it was it was undisciplined. The only one there that would had anything going on was the major. And he wanted me to stay because he's like, we need more troops like you. But I said, you got open fighting between soldiers. And I'm a sergeant, so I got to intervene. And people just don't want to do their job. And what it was is you just run like telephone wire from the front to the back, hooking up. And I'm like, this is not what I really wanted to do. I did it for a couple months, went on 2 weeks down at Fort McCoy, got trained as an Arctic Light fighter. So I got the medal for the Arctic Light fighter. Jumped out a helicopter at 10 feet into a lake.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I got to swim.
That's
Repelled.
cool.
Yeah, you repel from a helicopter at 100 feet after you do a lot of training on, repelling.
Sure.
We did a lot of things, bayonet course, a lot of different things. What really got me was I had to have my troops at the armory at a certain time. It was like 6 o'clock. So I got my troops there at 6 o'clock, rounding them up, got them there, fighting them all the way, each one poking at each other. And I'm like, God. And then I get to the armory and nobody's there. The armorer wasn't there. So in front of the formation, I'm over there with my troops because we were supposed to be at a certain place. I'm like, we don't have our arms. So the captain comes over, looks at me and says, why didn't you get your troops ready, get your rifles, and get to where you're supposed to be? I said, sir, if you get your damn armor there on time, we'd have been there. Because I was going to put up with no crap.
Mm-hmm.
I said, ask him where he was. Oh, you throwing him under the bus? I said, yeah, because he's not doing his job.
Schedule's a schedule.
Yep. So, and we got back from that, and I talked to the major, and I said, no, I just can't do this. This is too much. The discipline is just terrible. And I found out that the captain, he married some colonel's daughter type thing. So he's there, he's protected. Like, yeah, I'm not.
Once again, fighting that type of system.
Yeah. So I'm like, I can do better things on my weekends.
Yeah.
So I did, and I was going around doing different corporate jobs and working my butt off. And when I was living in Hudson, I had a neighbor. He came over to me and he says, you're always working long hours and doing this and that. He says, why don't you come and apply at the prison over in Minnesota, Oak Park Heights. It's a level 5. And I said, well, yeah, I'll give it a try. So I applied and I got accepted, but you had to wait a while for the academy to start. So in the meantime, I didn't have a job because I was working for Frito-Lay as a route driver, and they let me go because I was disloyal because I applied for another position.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, well, whatever, guys. I didn't even know if I was going to get it or if I was going to take it, but you made my decision for me. So I did a couple of temporary jobs. One of them was during the Christmas season. I worked for FedEx as a temporary driver, and I started the academy January 8th. Well, I got through the Christmas rush. It was the end of December, and the guy came to me. He says, I'd really like to hire you for one of my routes, and it would be close to home. It was in River Falls. And I'm like, I'm not going to do another corporate job. I'm just going to go work for the state of Minnesota. I'll get a pension. I'll get health care when I retire. That's a good deal. So I did that. What an experience.
Yeah, you mentioned you wanted your weekends back. How did that work with this position?
Yeah, you worked weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. You had to switch off everything, holidays, weekends.
Mm-hmm. I was working, holidays and weekends. You get the great Tuesday, Wednesday off or the Wednesday, Thursday off.
Right.
When you start. It's like, and usually it was either on afternoon shift or overnights.
So explain the level 5.
It's the highest level. It's the worst offenders. The murderers, the rapists, serial, they have problems in prison. At lower levels, they get shipped to us. So it was constant. There was a lot going on. They're always playing games. There's assaults. There's fights. Officers getting assaulted, inmates getting assaulted.
I was going to ask you, were you worried about being physically assaulted by anybody in there? Were there a lot of worries on that? Did any of that happen?
Oh yeah, there's not to me. Well, I got spit on, and one I accidentally got elbowed in the top of the head, but it was an accident, and I let the guy go. I'm like, he was a swamper, and he didn't know that I was down still patting him, and he brought his arm down. It wasn't hard.
Sure.
And I'm like, nah, not a big deal. Times that you always worry, you're in situations like something's kicking off. They have a beef with a guy. One time I had like 10 out doing popcorn on the weekends for these inmates. And one of the guys said the wrong thing, and then this one gang was going to go after him. But I got everything taken care of, and everybody went in, and I didn't write a report or anything. I just let it go because nobody got hurt. Nobody got assaulted. So a lot of times you just talk your way out of it.
You use the term swamper.
Yeah, they're the people that work in the unit, cleaning up in the unit, doing the floors.
Oh, okay.
And whatever else you need, the laundry, running out, getting food carts. They're more trusted. They usually have very little discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pretty good, but you don't trust them. Don't trust anybody.
Don't trust anybody.
No.
They're all innocent.
Yeah. You're darn right. There's a lot of innocent people in prison.
I feel sorry for the ones that do, where the system failed them.
Oh,
that's
that
a
happens.
tough deal.
Yeah.
But on the average, they're all
on the average,
at least saying that they're innocent.
Yeah. One even admitted, the charge that he got put in prison for, he didn't do. But he said, I think of all the other charges that I didn't get that I did do.
So he justified himself in there.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And then another one says, you don't want me on the outside. You want me in here.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
At least he's honest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Accepted his fate.
Yeah.
Well, and then you hear the stories too, where ones that can't integrate.
Yeah.
And they end up just doing something just to get back into what they know.
Right.
That's a sad state of affairs, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yep. And so towards the end of my career there, I took a position on squad on days, Well, there was a couple lieutenants in the watch command, in the watch center, that want this other guy to get it that was lower seniority than me. But the rules are, I get it. So what they did was, there was a round that was missing on the roof. I was the first one up on the roof for the morning shift, and I handed it off to the next guy. And then all of a sudden, before we were supposed to leave, our shift was up at 2:45 in the afternoon. He calls me at about 2. Hey, we have a problem. There's a round missing. I'm like, I handed it off to you. You got to check everything. And and in my mind, I'm like, why is it my problem?
Right.
I handed it off to him. It's his job to check it and everything. So it's on him. Well, the lieutenants didn't want him to get in trouble because he was the next selected for like sergeant and then go to lieutenant. He had the fast track. He was the golden boy. So they're trying to put it off on me, and I won't accept it. I wrote my report. I did everything that I was supposed to do, and but they still took me off my bid. So I bided my time. I know how this is going to work, and it was very stressful because I was told by one of the other officers that I'm being shunned. I'm like, interesting. You can't do that. You're not, no way. That's against all regs. Especially having an officer working in a unit and they say I'm shunned, is anybody going to help me when I get assaulted? Is that the deal? So, I went through a lot. It was really stressful, but I always kept my integrity, always was truthful, did what I was supposed to do. And I went to HR, eventually went to HR because, one of the lieutenants was pushing me. You got to do something about this. You got to do something about this. So I went to HR and I talked to the head HR lady and she says, well, they got to put you back on. Once you get that bid, they can't take you off. That's rules. You're protected like that. And then Sergeant Murray, who he's been there for almost 30 years at this time, and he was the guy that was officer at Fort Leavenworth in the Army. He said, stick up for yourself. You got rights, and don't let them railroad you. So she says, well, I'll have a talk with the captain and the lieutenants. Well, the one lieutenant I talked to, he was really dismissed me, really talked down to me in that. I'm like, oh, so this is how we're going to play it. So nothing happened for at least a week. And people were talking bad about me, lying about me, other officers. So I went to the HR again. I said, either this gets resolved or I'm filing harassment charges, and I seriously want to sue because this is not right. It's taking a toll on my health.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I'll take care of it, And we had a long talk about what was going on in the prison, and especially how veterans were treated, because we had several veterans, but it was a lot of the non-veterans that were going through the ranks, even though some of those lieutenants and sergeants were veterans, but I don't know if they hated the service, they had a bad experience, or what. We talked about one of the guys that was harassed because he had post-traumatic pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got so mad, he wanted to leave, and he was pounding on the Sally port, the final Sally port, to get out. And the lieutenant called and said, don't let him out. We can't let him out and drive in this condition. We got to get him calmed down. Well, he sent one of the guys up there, one of the sergeants that was making fun of him, to go and get him calmed down to go to the lieutenant's office.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah. Yeah, but they finally did get him to calm down so that they could send him home. And I went through a lot of incidents of other veterans and what they've had to go through, and like myself. And she was crying at the end. So she went right to the captain. She went to the warden and said, we have to do something, or he's going to take, she even told him, he's going to get part of your pensions if you don't get this resolved. after I talked to her and she said, well, you tell the lieutenant he's got to talk to you. So I said, per HR, you got to talk to me. And he's like, oh, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. I'm the lieutenant, really just being an ass.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day I get called to his office, apologetic, all kinds of things. Because he knew I was going to get part of his, if I would sue, I'd get part of his pension. And he says, I can put you on squad tomorrow. I said, that's not going to work. He said, why? I said, you created a hostile work environment. I said, it's going to take a while for this to blow over. So he said, you let me take care of it. If you don't file your harassment charges, I'll take care of it. Nobody's going to say anything about this. It's all going to be dropped. It's all going to be squashed. You're going to be back and, telling me what a glowing job I do and everything else like that. Yeah.
Blowing smoke.
Yep.
For his own butt.
Yep. So in the meantime, they put me back up in master to work up in master control that, you do a lot of doors and counts and, you record all the counts and count clear and that. So he went in there and he says, absolutely nobody talk about this round being lost on the roof. Absolutely nothing is going to be said. If you do, you're going to have to answer to me. And, he went around to a lot of the officers and said, no, this was a mistake. We don't know exactly who had the mistake. Because they didn't want to write up their guy.
Right.
But they would write me up. And at one point before, I went to HR, they were trying to write me up. But I had a lieutenant in my corner that knew how good I was. And he said, no, you can't. And he's like, why? He wrote his report. He's not taking blame for it. He said exactly what had happened. Oh. And so they were kind of stumped. And they thought they could write it out. And eventually I'd just give up. But no, not especially when you said you're going to shun me. That's not right.
How far into your career there was this?
This was probably year 7, I think it was.
Out of how many?
10. I stayed 10 and I got out. I was going to stay longer, but I was like, no. Just when that happened, once I got to the 10-year mark, I could get my pension and I could get health care and then retire. And then that was it. Mm-hmm. Before this, I had taken the sergeant's test. Scored really high on it because it was a psychological test more than anything. So you go through and they give you multiple choice of different ones. And I went through and tried to find a pattern. And I found a pattern. So then I went through, answered the questions. I was the last one out of there. And the lady from HR says, boy, that took you quite a while. I said, yeah. But she said, you scored the highest anybody's ever scored on this test. I said, you just got to find a pattern. She kind of looked at me.
And you know where that education began? When you were a dependent at these little schools and you were meeting all these people and learning how to read them.
That's right. So she's like, wow. So I got through that incident with, the round lost which is a big deal.
Yeah.
But one of the officers came to my defense and told the armorer, the guy that runs it, the sergeant, and said, you got flimsy, cartridges. They don't hold the round like, the really good ones. He said, yeah. And he says, anybody could have lost that round. But, I checked them and everything was right, lined up and everything before I gave it to him. I knew he was coming up. I knew everything was good. And that's why I was flabbergasted when he called me and said, oh, we got a problem. Well, I immediately went to, this is a setup.
Especially when he says we.
Yeah. I was going to say,
you.
No, you do.
Mm-hmm.
But I wrote up a report and everything because it was the watch commander on the next watch that I gave the report to. And he's the one that said, no, you can't write him up because, he went through and showed everything. Oh, that the lieutenant that was trying to get rid of me. Oh, and it really backfired. He was backpedaling quite a bit because he knew I was going to get part of his pension if I pursued it. But that was like 6 or 7. I have to look at the reports. I still have a file really thick everything that happened to me during that time. So, and they knew it. I came in with that stack, and they're like, "Oh," and I said, "It's all organized. So whatever argument you have, just bring it on." But I decided not to sue because it'd take so long, and it'd be pretty trying. So, and in the meantime, I was like, well, I could take sergeant, get a little bump in pay, and retire a little higher. But when it came to my turn, because now they were taking people by seniority. Before it was like kind of a selection. If it's your turn, even if you're not very good, if they liked you, they promoted you. Now they wanted to make sure you passed the test, that you were qualified. Well, every little thing that they could write me up for, they wrote me up when a promotion came up, what I could bid on. And the one...
To time it perfectly.
Yeah. One of it was we missed a round. So the people on that Saturday, we supposedly missed a round. Well, we didn't miss a round. There was just like a 40-minute gap. And they counted up how many rounds we did, went through the film, and there were more rounds than what we needed. But they still wrote me up and the guys, and it was right when there was a promotion for sergeant to make sure that I'm blocked. So then the next promotion, I'm like, well, I wonder what they're going to write me up for now. We had a trouble inmate, and he was on the board, and we had to go in there, and he would spit on people. So all I had to do was come in there, put the shield in front of him so he didn't spit on anybody. That's all. And the sergeant just put his hand back in, tightened it up, checked it, and left. Well, he wrote a report, and I didn't, so I got written up. But there's guys that were in that prison working, officers, that went through their whole career without writing one report, no matter how many incidents they were in. But you got me. And I told that lieutenant, I said, fine, write me up. I ain't taking a promotion. But I tell you what, it's going to go back into my file. And if I do decide to go after the harassment charges, this just adds fuel to it. Thank you. Then he kind of thought about it, but he already had his orders.
Right.
And then he went back, and then the next sergeant promotion, they didn't have anything on me. But I didn't take it. I didn't go for it.
Right.
They'd found something in the interview process or something that would disqualify me. So.
Oh, and you're so sick of it by then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. I wasn't the golden boy. I didn't rat on other officers. I didn't, that's one of the things they liked. You go to the lieutenant and start ratting people out, because some of the guys that I worked with on squad, one of the guys that I know really well, he would say, he's in there complaining about you. I'm like, so if the lieutenant's dumb enough to believe it and not look at the tape or investigate it, then what can I do? Like, so I don't care. Let him go run his yap.
So what was your last 3 years like? Did it just continue that way until the day you walked out the door?
No, they kind of let me go, or left me alone, because I didn't go for any. So I knew that they weren't going to let me have it. So I'm like, screw that. I'm not. And also a lot of the administrative rules were changing in favor of the inmates, giving them more rights. So I'm like,
why fight all that?
Right.
Take the retirement.
Yeah. And that's when, shortly after I left, and I knew what was going to happen, they murdered a corrections officer in Stillwater.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And there was others that got assaulted pretty severely, corrections officers, but, one, I don't think he'll ever work again at any job. They pummeled his head so bad, and they were fighting, even helping him out, giving him a retirement like they're supposed to. Last I heard, he's still fighting it. And then another guy that I knew pretty well, a sergeant, he got slashed with a shank. So every day when he looks in the mirror, he's got to see those scars. Mm-hmm. They won't even help him out with plastic surgery. They won't even retire him medically.
Mm. Sounds like a good place to get out of.
Right. And that's why a lot of officers, you got a handful of pills to get you through the day. Some of them, just for their mental health. And I'm lucky, no prescription drugs.
Yep.
So I do a lot of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I sit down and, I learned how to do meditation. One of the things that really help you. One of the other things I do is grounding. I go out barefoot, get on the ground, get those electrons. If you really want to get grounded, you either get down in the soil, dig a hole, or you use a tree. Trees' roots are deep, especially if you find a good hardwood.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of help your psychologically keep your mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, you were telling me when I was in Wisconsin after we, can't remember if it was before or after we interviewed your dad. It might have been, it was a week after because I had to come back for a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And we met for supper. And I remember you talking to me about some of the holistic stuff that you're doing to try to help yourself and not be taking a bunch of drugs and prescriptions and things. And
yeah, because that helps a lot, I think, for me anyway. Especially you go out in the morning, sun's coming up, just coming up, and you can just ground yourself. And I do what they call the first gate, which is a movement. Hard to explain, and then you just get there and at the end, you have your hands down, come together, and I put them down and just soak up the sun. I'm out there barefoot.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. Kind of similar. We put this garage on the house, and then we've got the 3 doors on the one side, one on the north. And the wife and I love grabbing either the north side or the south side. If you want the shade, you got the shade. If you want the sun, you got the sun on the other.
Yep.
And there is a lot to be said for just sitting there and have that sun in your face and just closing your eyes and just letting that beat on you.
Yeah.
And so have you done any like yoga type stuff with it, or are there some yoga movements with some of the stuff that you do? Real minor stuff or not?
I don't do any yoga. I thought about it, but I got a little less mobility in my artificial knee.
Yeah, you got a knee there.
Yep. So I don't know, but I'm getting it better through more movement and the grounding because I went through a lot being at the prison.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. And in fact, after the incident, when they were really after me, I had to do some counseling because, for Denise's sake and others that interact with me at home, it's tougher when you're really stressed at work to keep it away from home.
Right.
I'm not ashamed to say I had to go see a counselor. It happens.
Well, they're pushing that more and more now to, be a man and ask for the help and get the help that's out there.
Right.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Don't bottle it up.
Nope. Doesn't do anybody any good.
No.
So I would say instead of the yoga thing, like I mentioned, it's more like something my youngest daughter, Deanna, was talking to me about mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, there's, I think, a Vietnamese guy. I can't say the name. I'll murder it. But it's 3, like 4-letter words is his name. And he's got a lot of books.
Yeah.
And he really teaches that mindfulness portion. He was a Vietnamese guy. Like during the war, he came to the U.S., and I think she said he testified in front of Congress, and he was like trying to convince them, because he would always try to be rebuilding villages and stuff that were destroyed.
Right.
And he's just asking, can you please stop bombing our villages?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of dynamics with that. But basically, my daughter just mentioned that one part of the story. I'm really anxious to read the books. I read slow. I have one book in front of that. It's small, But I can't wait to get to the mindfulness ones because
Right.
she's explained it to us a little bit. And that's basically, with retirement, it helps. It takes a lot of pressure off.
Yep.
And then we love the mornings,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just sit there and soak it in, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Electrons, light, all that. Basically just relaxing. But the being mindful means like you've got this coffee in your hand, and the only thing in the world that matters is your feet on the ground, the chair, the sun or shade, whichever you need,
Yep.
the breeze, the coffee, and just don't focus on anything else but that,
Mm-hmm.
and enjoy it.
Yep.
And don't time it.
Yeah.
Don't even be thinking about time. Just when you feel that you're ready to move and go do something, then you do it.
Right.
So I'm really looking forward to reading the mindfulness because I'm sure that's a subject that can go way deep.
Right. Well, where I learned meditation was through Healing Waters, and their system is acuenergetics. So basically, you meditate, and then you take it further, and you can heal not only yourself, but you can heal others. Attention is probably one of the most important things you can put on anything. And what you do is, say somebody comes in and they have pain in their knee, and then you can find the spot. And what you're doing is you're meditating, and you can put your hand like over that spot and just feel. And that helps, because pain is when you have resistance and that electric signal can't get through. Because if you look at us, look at all the nerves in our body. And if you ask any doctor that does anatomy, they'll tell you, you're all electrical.
Oh, yeah.
You can take an oscilloscope and you can measure how much voltage is in your, because we used to do it in the Army. We'd have such sensitive equipment. Heck, hook yourself up. Oh, there I am. Little sine wave.
Wave.
Yeah. And also now they're coming up with a new system, an EE system. What it is there's a bunch of monitors with light and it's scalar waves and then photobiological waves. And what it does is create an environment around the person. And it takes all the toxins away from that area so that your body can self-heal faster. And it's wonderful. It's had a lot of good success.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to look and see if I can find they have a YouTube channel, and I'll have to send it to you. And then you can look into it. It's not for everybody. I mean, some people don't believe in it, but if you go into physics, quantum physics, all we are is energy, frequency, and vibration.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they explain the universe.
Right.
So you go back, nuns, they used to hand on healing, and they would pray and put their hands on the wound. So then you're putting that attention on that area, your attention or theirs or whatever. And that heals person faster, a lot faster. And you can find the medical studies for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's different things that people have practiced out there and through the years. And whether people believe it or not, if you're using something and it helps you, that's what matters.
Yep. That's true. Yeah. So we're going to try the light system and see if it works. But there's been plenty of people that have very positive results. And a lot of these, there's a lot more people opening up these rooms with these monitors and running that program with the light because it's been amazing for some people. Mm-hmm. Even people that didn't believe in it that went in and were skeptical, and then they came out and I said, unbelievable.
Is this stuff you're learning on books and internet, or is there like offices you've visited or professionals in these fields?
Professionals in the field. I mean, and online, you do your research. You don't just take anybody's, you know, testimony. You know, you got to have several resources, and because you never know if somebody's trying to scam you.
Right.
But Healing Water says, you know, they're doing really well, help healing people that are in pain or have different diseases or that. So it will cure a lot of different ailments that people have, you know, through meditation and, you know, healing, and through the light system. So they're getting their light system in October, I think it is. So then I've got sessions already lined up, so I'm going to try it. So
how far away is this from where you live? Is it in the cities?
It's in Stillwater. So it's like,
in Stillwater.
Yeah,
okay.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll go in there and, you know, you set for about 2 hours in this environment, and you can just sit and relax or read something or whatever, sleep, whatever you want to do, whatever you feel comfortable with doing.
Yeah.
You know, so there's other resources out there besides, you know, the mainstream medicine. So I don't want to get too involved in that because I don't know how much YouTube.
Sure.
You know, I'm not a doctor. I don't recommend anything to anybody, but for me.
Right.
You know, it's really helped, especially the meditation. So I love it. I can sit and just not, you know, just try to feel, not think about anything. And you'll be surprised, you know, especially if I'm outside, how many wild, you know, birds landing right next to you. It's like they don't even know you're there or don't even care. But when you get in that, you know, pay attention to them, they feel it and they leave. You can take a cat that's really hard to pick up. If you go into that meditative state where they can't really read you, you can go and pick them up. Yeah. It's amazing. You know, animals that just go right by you while you're just sitting there meditating. It's unbelievable. And really for my own health, you know, I used to drink a lot more. Now, I don't drink as much.
Right.
You know, shouldn't. Well, really, they say spiritually you shouldn't drink because it interferes with that and your feeling. So, but I still partake every once in a while.
Sure.
Feels good.
I grabbed my water a while ago.
I'm drinking ice.
Notice.
I'm drinking ice water.
Is there still ice in there?
A little bit. Nope, it's gone.
Yep.
But it's water. So that's what I've been drinking.
Yep.
All the other stuff is good. All the good stuff is gone.
Well, we'll see. We might go partake a little more after we're done with this. So
yeah.
But so we've been going at it for a while.
Yeah, we have.
And so we started with the being a military dependent.
Yep.
And telling what you wanted to on that, and going into your military career.
Yeah.
And then you told me just a little bit about your state job, but nothing like you just told me. No, that's the first time I heard any of that stuff.
Yeah.
That is a lot of stress. That is a lot of crap to put up with.
Yeah. On top of what you already have to do when you go into the job, you know, because you don't know what's going to happen. If somebody, you know, one of the inmates has a bad day, sees you and wants to attack you. Mm-hmm. They already lost it once and attacked somebody or did something bad. What doesn't mean they won't do it again.
Right.
A lot of them you talk about, we don't think about prison when we do it. You know?
Yeah. Well, that was a good call, obviously, to take the 10 years, especially when you can get, you know, you can retire at that point and get medical. Of course, medical's the big.
Right.
Besides your actual income and pension, I mean, medical is huge.
Yeah.
For retiring.
Yep.
And, you know, the different ages of Social Security and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. When I turned 62, I said, well, I'm going to take it. And it's a good move because by the time I hit 78, it's when it catches up. Who knows if you're going to live to 78?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want to.
Yeah. Spend your money earlier so you can travel and all that, because when you're
Right.
78, you're probably just going to want to sit at home all the time.
Exactly. Yep. I won't want to do as much as I did
Right.
before that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go whitewater rafting, that's for sure.
No.
Or climb a mountain.
You won't sit in your house like a prison, but you won't have quite the energy to do those types of things.
Right. I'll be able to get out and do things, just slower.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. And I think I'm in fairly good health. And really, I haven't even used that medical. I haven't had a medical bill in I don't know how long.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And the other thing too is they always tell you is a positive attitude, and don't dwell on the past. Don't bring up old grudges.
Yeah.
Don't dwell on what bad things happened to you in the past. I mean, I let you know what bad things happened, but I don't dwell on it. I know that, when I went through in the Army with that harassment, it really helped me out in the corrections field when it happened to me. So I knew how to get through it.
Yep. Experiences, they're building blocks. You don't want to look forward to bad things happening, but it's a way that you were prepared to handle that stuff. But then there comes a time where time is time.
Yep.
And you can back off from all that stuff and enjoy what I call the soft starts in the morning. I love my soft starts. That's kind of what I was talking about with being in the garage and the mindfulness and all that. I've said, I might have one thing to do that day, might have 6, might be 30 minutes worth, might be 6, 7 hours worth.
Yep.
But always start with that soft start. Of course, that book I'm reading is on lower back, and the VA is giving me some exercises to strengthen my core for the lower back.
Right.
So that's, and it's this guy that it was really breakthrough stuff in the 60s. And we have this gal on contract, like sports medicine person in our fighter squadron.
Yep.
And the Guard and some of the Air Forces now active duty have started those contracts to help the pilots with their bodies. Because just think about flying a high-performance aircraft for 20 years.
Oh.
Just the necks alone, because the helmets are heavy enough, and then we're putting night vision goggles and cueing systems and stuff on there. So there's just so many things that can go wrong for your body and stress your body.
Yep.
So I'm partially into that book on the back.
Yep.
And so then the Vietnam mindfulness are the next 3 books. So working on my body now, that'll work on my head with the other 3 movies.
Books.
Yeah, if it was a movie, it'd be easier.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so looking forward to that. But the point is taking care of yourself.
Right.
And it's easier once you're at the retirement level because you don't have all the everyday stresses and the extra stresses that you had pulling on you. So do what's good for you, the mindfulness, physically take care of your body, enjoy retirement. We're not here all that long.
Yep.
And we just, as far as my faith, work your way to the afterlife.
Right.
I'd rather focus on that than watch the dang news every night at 10.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
That'll drive you crazy. Yeah. I don't watch much news. I think one thing that people have to realize is come together as a community and help each other. I always was taught that. My parents taught me that, help people out and don't expect something from them for helping them out.
Right. You don't do it for a reason.
Right.
A bad reason.
I'm, like when we first moved to Ellsworth, there was an elderly lady next door and she needed help with her lawn. I said, I'll do it. And I did other things for her, but I never expected anything. I never wanted anything. She'd always try to give me things. It's like, I don't need anything from it. Just the helping you out is satisfaction enough. And always, and I had Sam do that when in Hudson, we had a neighbor. She liked to have her lawn mowed, and he would also shovel her sidewalks and her driveway. And I said, you don't have to take anything.
Mm-hmm.
But she'd always give him something.
Yeah, I've had a couple people offer me, this and that. And then he just finally asked me, this was just last week, well, what can I give you? And I just typed, it was all on text. I said, your friendship, ... Said as a statement, not a question. No, it's all, I've said many times, life's about relationships anyway. And a lot of times, I'll go back to the faith portion of it. A lot of that times there's people out there praying for something.
Yep.
Big, small, whatever.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times those answers aren't necessarily, they're not answered by God directly. They're answered by people that are feeling what you feel, and you see somebody that's in need and you help them. And by golly, you might be answering a prayer that they had, but God's doing it through proxy.
Yeah. It's, you can manifest a lot with your mind, and a lot of people, if they did it, want to help somebody out. And look at how many times, if you have a lot of people praying for somebody and they pull through, because your attention is one of the most important things you can give. If somebody asks for help, actually really pray to help them or help them in what ways you can. Because we all need help at one time. We're all in this together.
Yeah. I remember having some very desperate feelings. When I was younger, you didn't have much money, cars breaking down, this and that. And I just remember just on more than one occasion having a very desperate feeling. And there's been times, even people in my community here, even after I was married and bought this place and raising a family, and like one thing in particular, we had those huge snowstorms in '96, and my tractor had just broke down, and we had 12-foot drifts across the driveway, and they were thawing and freezing, so they're turning into ice.
Yeah.
And a neighbor with this tiny little Massey Ferguson tractor, he saw me. He drove by. He saw me on the top of one of those hills, digging straight down with a shovel, trying to break through. Next thing you know, he's here helping me out, and I'm like, I was so relieved for that help. So I try to, if you see somebody and you can tell that they're getting into desperation, just hop in and do what you can, and do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't do it for anything else.
Right. Like in Hudson, one of an elderly guy would come and dig out his ex-wife, and sometimes the plow would come by, and the driveway where she pulls in would get pretty filled up. Well, I'd just take my snowblower and go through and clear it out, because I didn't want him doing it.
Right.
He's working hard enough and a lot of times I'd go a lot further with the snowblower before he got there. I'd try to get there so that he'd show up, and it's like, it's already done. Then I said, just go visit her. She probably wants some company.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's a lot to that too, just visiting people.
Yep. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've always been a quality guy. I know we didn't get to spend as many hours together growing up. You get guys in Wisconsin, and we had a lot of family in Wisconsin. So sometimes when we went over there, we didn't see both sides of the family and stuff.
Right.
But I do remember getting to spend a lot of time at Grandma Biles with you and Vicky.
Yeah. She was quite the lady. Yeah. I do miss her. She was a lot of, fun. She was, I don't know. She was a good person. She was a heck of a baker. Cook too. But gosh, she can, and there was a lot of fun times there. I wish I had more, but we were, a lot of times we lived quite a ways away.
Right.
Right.
Well, and what's going to be happening coming up here, middle of October, we've got a first cousin. I haven't met her yet, but these guys have done a lot of research on the Bradshaw side of the family, and it's probably not going to be put out on YouTube, but like I mentioned in the introduction to the podcast, my 5-minute interview, that there's going to be some of these that we're going to make that are going to be like for family only. But these guys have tons of information on both sides of the family. The grandma we're talking about and her husband, and all the way back to the middle 1600s on the male side of that. And it's going to be pretty cool. So we're going to get together. They've got all kinds of records, family trees that are huge. We're going to have cameras sitting on top above the table looking down. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a bigger production than what I've done, with the podcasts and casts and stuff. But that's going to be the next time we're together.
Yes.
Is the middle of October, and I think my brother's going to come along.
I hope so.
I think the wife's going to come along.
Good.
So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
To learn more about, and a lot of it's veteran based, military based.
Yeah.
Just going along my dad's side, all the males prior, the top line on that tree. These guys, they can point to a guy and say he was in this war. Point to another guy, he was in this specific battle. It's going to be a very educational thing. So, I mean, it could be a long video, but it's for our family.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's probably not something that we will post, but we never know till we're done.
Yeah.
And it might be just it might be something that we post unlisted, so that it's on YouTube.
Right.
But then we can send the links out because you can view it if you have the link.
Yeah.
So that'd be fun. So basically, I'm pointing out the next time we're going to see each other, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, it will be. And Pam, she's the one that does the research. She's got a lot of stories. I got a lot of stories. And then, in Durham, there was archives in the library, old newspapers. And I went through and did a lot of running out, printing out articles of the family.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. We'll be scanning stuff in, and who knows how many hours it'll be, but we're going to do it all. So, even if we need more than one session.
Well, it probably will be.
Well, I'm figuring it'll be all weekend to begin with.
Yeah.
Because I'm planning on driving down there Saturday or Friday.
Yep.
So we have Saturday, whatever time on Sunday. Because I told Jack, my brother, said, and he's got some vacation he's got to use up. So I said, well, make sure you sign for at least Friday and Monday.
Right.
Because Saturday and Sunday will be used up.
That's right.
So.
And, because there's a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And one of our mom's cousin, it'd be your dad's cousin, would be, I'm going to have to contact her. I know she's got some stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, whoever we can get there.
Yeah.
We'll get it all, all filmed.
I'll try to get her to send some information, some stories that she has.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I sure want to thank you for you drove all the way over here from Wisconsin today.
Yep.
We're going to figure out what we're going to go do tomorrow. We're going to go see my sister and my mom that you wanted to see.
Yep.
We'll decide if we're going to go horseback riding tomorrow or not. Going to go eat some lunch.
Yeah.
And then we've got to go through the photos and see what we're going to scan in and all that.
Right.
For this podcast.
Right. I got some photos. Good ones.
Yeah. So, anyway, thanks again, Dennis.
You're
welcome.
It was
a great time. I sure appreciate you coming over and doing this.
Yeah, it was fun. It was you get to talk about a lot, and then my family will be able to know what I did.
You bet.
Yeah,
yep. That's why we're doing this.
Right. It's good people to kind of know what veterans go through, and especially like when you sign up, you do give up quite a bit because. A lot of non-veterans, they start at a job, maybe a factory or some other business, and they get to go through and get promoted and everything. And by the time, we get out, whether it's 2, 4, 6, 8, how many ever years, we're kind of behind the 8 ball.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you look at your Social Security too, usually you don't earn as much as you would in the private sector.
Right.
And then you take a hit on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and with the veteran stuff you mentioned, I mean, 4 years in the Army, but doing 4 is enough. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to look down on 4 versus 20. At least they shouldn't anyway.
Right.
Then you did some time in the Air Guard.
Yeah.
But then you also had the veterans issue at the state job that you had, where you mentioned there was more than one veteran struggling
Yep.
in that situation.
Yep.
So all the veterans out there, you need to be utilizing whatever's available to you.
Yes.
The VA is the first place to start.
Yep.
And look into the PACT Act, PACT, I believe, and go from there.
Right.
And,
get some help. Because if you look at a lot of like the Iraqi veterans that came back and how many have post-traumatic, I've met quite a few.
mm-hmm.
Well, even in working at the prison, there was quite a few of them that went through a lot. And I know through some of my family members that one in particular, his friend served over there, and he got out, but he just couldn't handle it, so he had to go back in because of bad post-traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
But they let him back in, and even with the VA and all the counseling and all the whatever they give you, it's still hard to deal with.
Right.
And just don't self-medicate. That doesn't work.
No, you don't want to do that.
No, because I've seen so many, the World War II, Korean, and Vietnam vets. It was bad. It's a bad outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Get the proper help.
Yep. You're not alone. Don't be alone.
Right. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
You bet.
That's the biggest thing.
All right.
Yeah.
You bet. Well, if that's the only thing you get out of this, that's probably the best part. So
right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks again, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. We'll have some fun the rest of this week and
darn right
get together in the middle of October and do the family thing. So
right.
So all right. Well, thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll
Thanks.
talk to you later.